Hi everybody, Iron Liz here. So today I'd like to speak freely on a cultural commentary track. This isn't the main part of the show and it's completely unscripted, but I instead want to use this segment to sort of talk about more recent events going on right now. So today I'd like to talk about the Women's March event that took place in Washington, D.C. Now I know it's a couple weeks old, and I know most people by this point have probably forgotten about it, but after a lot more details have emerged and a lot of criticism that came out of that was more apparent to me, it reminded me of something that I read, and I wanted to share that with you today. But first, let me kind of back up. So after Trump's inauguration, there was a Women's March movement that took place in Washington. So from this movement, women who were pro-life were disinvited, and it was predominantly people on the left announcing their grievances, I guess, about Donald Trump's election. The problem with this, though, is that the two women who organized this event were probably some of the most, shall we say, unworthy people to organize this event. The two main individuals were Donna Hilton and Linda Sarsour. So Donna Hilton was a convicted murderer. She tortured a gay man to death and was sentenced to 25 years for, I believe, second-degree murder. If you read into what she did specifically, she took pliers to the guy's testicles, she shoved like a 3-foot metal rod up his ass, basically left him in a locker for 15 days. Like, she tortured the man to death. At the hearing, or at the trial, she said, oh, well, he was a homo anyway, it didn't matter. Like, this is our great organizer. It seems you're rallying behind a criminal of the worst stripe, I might add. I can't think of anything worse to do than murder apart from rape, to be perfectly honest. And the other woman you have is an Islamicist named Linda Sarsour. I've been told that Sarsour in Arabic means cockroach. Linda Sarsour promotes female genital mutilation, which is completely antithetical to feminism, I thought. She's apparently connected to some extremist Islamist groups, and she promotes Sharia law, which, again, you would think that feminism would be firmly against because of all the restrictions it places on women, specifically that they're treated less than equals to their husbands or to their male counterparts. They're not allowed out of the house. And then there was this whole thing about we gotta put hijabs on people, and this is empowering to wear this thing. The irony, though, is that in Muslim-majority countries, this is not you have a choice to wear it, it's prescribed by law. So if you don't wear it, you get arrested. I have my own opinions on it, but I really love the comment that Gavin McGinnis made about it. Why is it made out of black cloth in the Middle East? Why not gauzy cotton or something like that? It's clearly designed to be punishing. As I mentioned earlier, this reminds me of a specific reading that I once had. It's actually from a book by John Norman called Imaginative Sex. Now, okay, let's back up here. So John Norman, he's the author of a series of books called The Chronicles of Gore. So the Gorean books were, I think they're one of the longest running sci-fi / fantasy novels out there. They started in the mid-60s. They kind of have a very sinister, almost reputation because they're very incendiary. The purpose, they're fantasy novels, yes, but they're set in kind of a even more extreme version of like Conan the Barbarian, where women are essentially deeply subservient slaves to men. So the reason that I found this book and the reason I've read these books was when I went back to school and I volunteered at a sexual assault helpline. This was right around the time that 50 Shades of Grey came out. The Gorean individuals that practiced this stuff were people that were on our radar as abusers because they were seen as very, very extreme. I mean, even in the BDSM community, they were very much like, you gotta watch out for these guys. I had a colleague in Iowa who described there was a Gorean group that was taking women who were interested in S&M and like taking them in vans and like cutting their flesh like on their thigh, because that's one of the deep things in the book is that slave girls have like a brand on their thigh. I practice Socratic humility in the idea that I don't let people make up their mind for me. Now, to be completely forward and upfront, I don't like this stuff. Gorean stuff I think is pretty gross. It's not for me. It's not anything I would ever be interested in. It reaches the wrong conclusions. I think it's sort of a feminism for men in a lot of respects. And if you look into the rationale for why it was written, it was in a lot of ways written counter-argument to the feminism and social Marxism of the 1960s. So he wrote it to be incendiary on purpose. But some people, the practitioners who take it, that is so far away from anything that I can even condone. It's to each their own, but I think that's pushing the line, as we'll see. The interesting thing with John Norman is that he wraps his philosophy up into the stories. So a lot of the books themselves are parables. The second book in the Gore series I thought was absolutely brilliantly written. It was a parable and an indictment against modern feminism, and I thought it was a very, very well-written story. But as they go on, they become much more about the subjugation side of things and the characters to me seem a lot less realistic, so they're just not as interesting to read. But one of the books that he also wrote was this book called Imaginative Sex. I bought this book initially because I wanted to compare it against another book that I found called The Sexual Responsibility of Women. Now that book was written in the early 60s as well, so I wanted to compare the two against each other. The irony is I learned of that book through a Riff Tracks video where it showed, women from the 60s going through a magazine and they had a book review of this book. So I thought, well, okay, this should be a laugh. That is a discussion for another day, but I wanted to compare the two since they were written relatively the same amount of times and to figure out what exactly he was talking about. Like I said, I can't let anybody else make up my mind for me. To bring this all back around again, I read through this book, Imaginative Sex, and there was a number 44, and I'm going to read it for you. And I want to give you a disclaimer at the beginning of this. I don't condone this in any way. I don't even agree with this in any way. And if you don't want to hear this, then turn off the video. Let me just go through it. This is called the Slave Girl Exchange Fantasy. And this is on page 187. Buy the book if you really want to. This is made with fair use. A spaceship crewed by 4 men and 1 woman due to instrument failure deviates considerably from course and, months later, crashes on a small, uncharted planet, one of thousands in the galaxy. The 4 men are all highly educated, extremely intelligent, civilized gentlemen. They all have doctorates, too, ranging from computer science to astrophysics. The woman, too, is a worthy member of this crew. She, too, is extremely intelligent and holds, say, a doctorate in mathematics or physics. Let's call her Doreen Elliott. In spite of her education and intelligence, she is something of a pain in the ass to them, for she is arrogant, sharp-tongued, and given to put-downs. She uses her education and intelligence as weapons, in wars the men do not fully understand and would just as soon as not fight. The chip of frustration, of course, is on her shoulder. She would be much happier if the 4 of them would pay more female-to-male attention to her, for example, giving her a good raping and slap on the ass, and then sending her back to her important duties. You see what I mean? Anyway, they try not to see her, of course, as the beautiful, nasty, sexually deprived female. Does that sound familiar? But as she verbally insists she be seen, rather too often, merely as a fully equal, respected, competent crew member. That she happens to be female complicates the operation of the ship, but perhaps not so much as her constant insistence that the fact is unimportant. The men would be willing to forget about it, if only she would shut up about it. She does not shut up, of course, because, subconsciously, she wants it to be constantly on their minds. The matter is further complicated by the fact that the men, when all is said and done, are rather fond of Dr. Elliott, their beautiful, bitchy colleague. Even with her nastiness, they would rather have her around than not. We may suppose that, in accords with her program of professed determined neutership, she wears a severe hairstyle and a concealing uniform consisting of coveralls. A week or so of the crash landing on the uncharted planet, the party is contacted by aliens native to this world. They are humanoid. There are about 5 of them, 4 males, barbarians, and a female, an excitingly clad creature, collared and branded, who serves them as a slave girl. The Earthlings, who are lost on this new world, are much in need of the help of these aliens. Communication, by gestures and words, is managed. The aliens visit frequently. On these occasions, the beautiful alien slave girl serves all food and drink. She is beautiful and submissive, and is concerned to be pleasing. The Earthmen are stunned with the unexpected pleasure of being treated by a woman as though they were thought to be important. The alien beauty is in awe of them, and only because they are men and free. She herself is only a lowly female slave. Suddenly, as never before, unusual emotions, primitive emotions, flood within them. Their blood is suddenly aware, as it never was on their own world, of their masculinity. They are men. In the eyes of the girl, they see that they are dominant over her. They realize, with sudden comprehension of power, never intellectually permitted them, in the context of their own conditioning, that they are the dominant sex, and that anything else, whatever its political or economic justification, they look at her beauty, the lovely slenderness of her body, her legs, her ankles, her breasts, the delicacy of her head and expressions, and know that she, that beauty, with all her luscious desirability, belongs by the right of nature to the larger, coarser animal, the dominator, the man. There is immediate friction, of course, between the lovely slave and Dr. Doreen Eliot, our ill-tempered female PhD. It is to be expected. There are two very different conceptions of female. The slave, in the presence of Dr. Eliot, feels her servitude much more cruelly. Further, Dr. Eliot, resenting the slave's obvious attractions to the male crew members, among whom, to that time she has only been female, treats her with great harshness. The slave, of course, vulnerable in her scanty garments and ornaments, must accept whatever abuse a free person, in this case Dr. Eliot, cares to heap upon her. The poor girl suffers much at the hands of our arrogant female PhD. On the other hand, the leader of the barbarians does not fail to recognize that Dr. Eliot, herself in coveralls with her severe hairstyle, is also female too, and a young and desirable one. He is puzzled to see the insolence and abruptness with which she treats her male colleagues. Does she not know she is a woman? The barbarian leader suggests that an exchange take place, that he trade the lovely slave girl for Dr. Eliot. Naturally, the men refuse to do this. That night, in the shell of their wrecked ship, in their makeshift camp within it, Dr. Eliot heaps scorn on the barbarians and is much amused at their preposterous suggestion. It is as though they had asked them to trade her, a high-order, highly educated, extremely intelligent woman being, one of their own crew members, a person, for a camel or some such animal. How preposterous! How delightful! The story will bear mirthful retelling when they return to Earth. The poor, simple-minded barbarians. She is, of course, also very flattered, though she would not admit it. The slave girl was very beautiful. That night, alone, naked, Dr. Eliot views herself in the mirror. She is quite pleased. The reflection that faces her is one of a statuesque, very desirable female. She regards herself as a better, even as a mere naked female, than the lowly slave girl. In the morning, however, their camp is surrounded by hundreds of barbarians. Clearly, the barbarians wish to have the woman, if necessary, by force. Resistance is useless. The woman is to be theirs, either with or without bloodshed. The men's choice is quite simple. Either they surrender Dr. Eliot willingly, or, after they are slain, she's taken by force. "Do not give me up," she cries, for the first time in her life, understanding that the dependence of women on the voluntary protection of men. Her PhD forgotten, she finds herself appealing to them as women, begging them to defend her. "Take her," says the leader of the Earthmen, "she is yours." Dr. Eliot is forced to kneel. Chains are snapped on her wrists, slave chains. She is led away, crying and screaming, a weeping, captive, terrified female. The beautiful slave girl remains. She kisses the feet of the men and begs to serve them. The barbarians return from time to time. It seems that on their world, women were kept as animals and slaves. It is a decision they made long ago as men. In their history, women had once been free, as on earth, but over centuries they had grown more unpleasant, hostile, and competitive. They had made the lives of men miserable. They had gathered wealth and power into their hands, and through education and conditioning were attempting to turn males into conflict-ridden, guilt-torn inferiors. Using claims of justice and morality subtly perverted to their own ends, they managed, finally, to achieve a misery-laden, unstable political dominance. The next step was to bring about the total enslavement of males, beginning with male children. A swift, brutal revolution, however, took place, and it was the men who, with their patience' end, overthrew the women, making slaves out of their beautiful would-be oppressors. They reasoned that women would make slaves of men if they could, but they can't, so why should men not make slaves of women because they can? All female children on the world, then, were raised to be beautiful and pleasing to men and to be their slaves. And, of course, to be pleasing to men and to be their slaves, they were given lengthy, detailed, exquisite training to this end. If either the men or the women must be slaves, let it be women, so reason the natives of this strange world. Their barbarism, far from being a rudimentary stage in their cultural advance then, is the result of a deliberate cultural choice on the civilization's part. It is a deliberately selected, rationally determined phase of cultural development, superseding an era of hypothetical equality but actual subtle female dominance. It represents the repudiation of the social experiment of feminism, splendid on paper, but fraught with natural consequences of misery for men. Hostile, selfish, competitive women, hating men and attempting to degrade and humiliate them, whatever their theories may be, do not produce large amounts of human happiness, either for themselves or others. On paper, feminism seemed to be practical and moral as mankind, without artificial distinctions, joyously hand in hand, man and woman, marched forward in a new technological and cultural society. Unfortunately, love became no more frequent under feminism than it had been under democracy, as women proved to be quite grasping and self-seeking as men were as ever, so that what began as a moral, humane program with appeal to all rational minds became in its practical development the attempt to politically manipulate males and obtain special discriminatory privileges on the basis of female genitalia. To the men of the barbarian culture, however, the distinction between male and female did not seem an artificial distinction, but quite a natural one. The fact that one sex is smaller and weaker than the other did not seem an irrelevant consideration in the determination of which sex is to be dominant. It is not an irrelevant consideration among other animals, so why, among men who are more intelligent than other animals, should it be irrelevant? It is, of course, natural that the smaller, weaker animals should insist on its irrelevance. The stronger, larger animals, however, must make up their own minds on the matter. However, the men of this alien culture never subscribed to the hollow body theory of human beings, namely that the human being is merely a product of his environment. This is obviously false with other animals, and there seems to be no reason to suppose that it's true with human beings. The human mind is not a blank tablet on which the government or those who are in control of the media, claiming they represent freedom, may inscribe what they wish. Verbal stimuli are insufficient to mutate the human species. The alien civilization then, the Earthmen learn, had instituted a conscious social advance, superseding an era of misery, masculine-controlled females. Unconditional surrender was the only alternative extended to females in this planet's war of the sexes. Surrendered, the lovely females were then reduced, if they wished to live, to total bondage. Their heads on the block, the choice between slavery or death was put to them. The beauties begged for chains. When the chains were brought, they were forced to kiss them before they were placed on their bodies. Then chained, they were taken to be sold or distributed to males. From the point of view of the men, the unbonding of females constituted an advance, a step towards social progress, toward a more harmonious, stable, happier society. The bankruptcy of militant, manipulative feminism repudiated, masculine dominance was societally instituted. In the struggles of the sexes, the men, wary of lies and cant, impatient of propaganda, refused to be fooled into oppression and subservience. The aliens reasoned that either men or women must be dominant, if only in virtue of group identification phenomena, that men and women cannot both be dominant. Accordingly, the men, having the power, decided it would be they, not the women, who would be dominant. Accordingly, sharp, exact divisions between the sexes were instituted on the planet. This was made possible in part because of the earlier abolition of the family, one of the major victories of radical feminism, which saw the family, an odd paranoia, as an institution designed to suppress females. Anthropologically, of course, the female is an institution which functions to protect the young and the female. Pseudo-men, of course, do not need young. She sees through them. She understands their societal function. It is to facilitate her further oppression. As soon as, in effect, the state became the great mother of all the children, the cruel revolution of the aliens became feasible, if not necessary. The islands of love and understanding in the interests of ideology were systematically destroyed. Two antagonistic opposing classes remained, each vying to dominate and control the limited resources of the community. This ugly situation of male and female animals snarling at one another and snapping for the same pieces of meat was socially and psychologically unstable to achieve long historical persistence. The aliens resolved the situation simply. Men are masters, women are slaves. The ambiguities of our civilization, for better or worse, are thus avoided, in the conflicts for dominance, with their attendant miseries, are endemic. Social stability in sexual relationships is thus categorically, definitively achieved. If there must be an oppressed class in any civilization, why, reason the aliens, should it not be women? They are easily recognized, desirable, beautiful, and physically weaker than men. Why should it not be they who are slaves? Men, tired of conflict, will have it so. The women will simply be enslaved. The women in this civilization, too, interestingly, have responded beautifully, amazingly to their bondage. It is almost as though they, in their lovely biological core of them, recognize that they were not the dominant sex, and wish their biological status to be desired, hunted, and had organism be institutionalized, thus relieving them of the stresses of ambiguity and competitiveness. To the amazement of the Earth men, they came to realize that women, under this tyrannous regime, are, although superficially resentful, statistically, profoundly, gloriously happy. They love men, and as women wish to be women, and women of such men. They find their pleasure and fulfillment in being women, not in being pseudo-men. There is no hypocrisy and pretense in their loving submission to their masters. They are simply, factually mastered. They do not dream of the honor of being a free person or as a wife. It is not within their ken. Further, they would know that they are kept as slaves. If they were not kept as slaves, they would try, unable to help themselves, to be masters. But deep within them, they do not wish to do this. They most respond to a man who understands their true nature and will keep them in their place. They have no respect for a man who pretends not to be a dominant. He is like a lion who pretends to like vegetables. Perhaps not a lion at all, surely, but at the very least, a liar. Who does he think he's fooling? He is a man, and they are only women. They despise him for this weakness, or his hypocrisy. If they can, they will try to make his life miserable. It continues on with a few of these metaphors, but I'll move forward to the story. The Earthmen make their first mistake with the lovely slave when they attempt to treat her with excessive kindness. Sensing this in them as weakness, she immediately becomes petty, lazy, irritable, and petulant. When the leader, putting aside his scruples, his earth conditioning, cuffs her twice, bringing blood to her mouth, she realizes suddenly that these men, as much as the men on her own planet, are males and must be obeyed. This brief administration of physical discipline works as a transformation in the girl, and, henceforward, deliciously, joyfully, she serves them. They have demonstrated their dominance over her, and their refusal to accept insubordination. She has tested them and found them strong. Reassured, knowing that they are truly men, truly her masters, she serves them happily and marvelously as a slave girl. After some months, the aliens return again. This time they bring forward a new, beautiful slave girl. She wears scanty, diaphanous garments, rude, barbaric ornaments, sensual slave cosmetics. She is, of course, Dr. Doreen Elliott, who has been trained as a slave girl. Obediently, submissively, as the other slave girl had done, she serves them food and drink. The Earthmen are astounded. They had never realized she was so beautiful. All of them immediately desire to lay her. They are further startled at her submissiveness, her unquestioned, self-effacing servility. She obviously fears her masters very much. Through her diaphanous garments, they can see on her thigh that she has been branded. About her throat, however, there is no collar. The barbarian chieftain, before leaving, again proposes an exchange of women. Doreen looks at the men, pleading with them to accept her. They have, of course, in the past months, grown fond of the young alien slave. Doreen's eyes plead with them. She dares not speak, of course. The men look at one another and understand one another. The trade is agreed upon. But before departing with his former slave, the barbarian chieftain gives the leader of the earth an object wrapped in silk. The men and Doreen, now returned to them, go into the wrecked ship, which they have now made into their makeshift camp. She is almost hysterically grateful at her rescue. She weeps. She's now safe. If you only knew, she weeps, what they had me do, what they made me learn. The men, of course, have a very good idea of the training of which the beautiful earth woman was subjected. She stands there and faces them, clad in the diaphanous garments and barbaric ornaments of a slave girl. "Bring me my coveralls," she commands them. The men do not move. She is suddenly startled. "Bring me my coveralls," she demands. The men regard one another. It is unlikely that they will ever be rescued. "We do not need a PhD in mathematics," one of them says to her. "What do you need?" she asks in a whisper. "A woman," responds the leader of the Earthmen. Doreen looks at them, shaking her head. "No," she whispers. "No!" "Prepare to be beaten," says the leader of the Earthmen. Doreen's wrists immediately cross themselves and presents themselves to her for binding. She looks at them with horror. She has been well trained. "Don't beat me," she begs. The leader of the Earthmen unwraps the object, wrapped in silk, which had been given to them as a parting gift by the chieftain of the barbarians. It is a steel slave collar. Doreen looks at them with horror. "Kneel to be ordered, slave," orders the leader of the Earthmen. Obediently, numbly, Doreen, the female slave, kneels to be collared. The collar snaps around her throat. "Whose slave are you?" asks the leader of the Earthmen. Doreen looks about them. "I am your slave," she whispers. "Masters." The leader of the Earthmen then takes her in her arms and carries her to another room within the ship, where he places her on the bedding. The others will, in their turn, similarly enjoy the beautiful slave. And there's more, of course, to the story, but this is not an erotic channel, so we won't go there. But I want to bring up the point that this was written in 1974. Now, is it incendiary? Yes. Is it using violence to achieve ends? Absolutely. And more than likely, most people would be offended in reading this. However, the philosophy that he's talking about is very, very reminiscent in a lot of ways to what's been going on in our own societies, particularly within the West. Again, this is a fantastic caricature of a setting. It's a philosophical argument made to argue against the excesses of feminism. But it's strange indeed, right? There's a lot of parallels in modern society, namely that women in general have been increasingly unhappier as time has gone by. The MGTOW movement that's come out of the excesses of feminism, especially in areas like paternity law or jail time sentences or even divorce court, all this stuff, a lot of it is very reminiscent of what could happen. So for me, when I saw the Women's March and I saw things like the nasty women and the vileness, I guess you could say, of having a 6-year-old talk about her pussy, is like, that's just so disgusting and gross and wrong. You have to wonder if there won't in fact be a societal backlash, especially when you have women who it seems are putting on hijabs, which for me, unless you're seriously interested in converting to another religion, it almost seems to me as though you're asking for a more patriarchal, dominant, and vindictive, vicious society to take you over. So that's all I'll say on it. Once again, this is from John Norman's Imaginative Sex book, so take it for what you will. It does offer a counter-argument of things that potentially might happen or philosophically what the differences might be. The fact that a lot of old-school patriarchal societies still exist in the world and suggest that most of, if not all of societies that were successful civilizationally came as the result of patriarchal societies, it makes you wonder where the common root to all of this goes and where it could go. I'm Iron Liz, and thanks for listening. If you like the content of my podcasts, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. The bigger the audience I can spread the heresy toward, the better. You can also follow me on Twitter at Iron Liz. Once again, I'm Iron Liz, and thanks for listening.